Okay, we are live on our first AI Impact Live. Thank you for joining in today. My name is Jonathan and I'm your host, and I would like to welcome you to our new series AI Impact Live, where we are diving deep into the challenges and opportunities in generating tangible value from data and AI initiatives. Together with experienced data leaders and product managers, such as Max, we will explore how to bridge the gap between data and business teams to unlock true impact. As an introduction, each session of our series on AI Impact Live will tackle on different problems, and we are going to deep dive into each topic in the next sessions. However, today, to kick things off, we are starting strong with a special guest, our very own CPO, Max Könnings, mapping out the problems and challenges of data leaders. So welcome, Max.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. And almost like best thing is that you are organizing this first AI Impact session with great topics. I think today is just the first one. I'm not sure if that's always a good thing, but maybe I can raise the bar to a good level, and then we extend this AI Impact sessions with even more leaders and in the community. So much looking forward to this, and thanks for organizing, Jonathan.
Perfect. Thank you. I would say, to get things started, I would propose that we do a little introduction round. And as you are my guest today, I would like to start with you. So what brought you, Max, into data product management?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. So for the audience, what brought me into data product management? I think we have to start with the question, what brought me into product management? Because that's basically was my first job at Vorwerk. I was the global product manager for Thermomix for a couple of years. And one topic that apparently also came across was like, how do we get data from Thermomix so we can better develop the product, we can build better services around the product. So that led me actually into the function of being head of data products for Thermomix. Before Nadim, who I met at the university, basically approached me and said, hey, Max, like product management and data, we should think about how we can generate benefits from both worlds. And I think that's when we co-founded Mindfuel. And there's this called, the founder principle called birds in the hand principle. So basically you take what you have, product management and data expertise, and you join this together. I think that's when we started about thinking how those two worlds can benefit from each other. Mm-hmm. And that led us to founding the company at the end of the day. And today we have our Mindfuel studio. So we are doing everything around data strategy, also data product strategy. So being very specific about data products here also. Always with the goal of helping our customers, which we really strongly see as our partners in delivering business results. And then, of course, we have Mindful Delight, which is our data impact platform and management workspace for data leaders, which is really our SaaS application to scale this and also help organizations to adopt the principles of product management and create an impact in their data organization. So that's about myself.
Okay, thank you for your introduction. It definitely sounds like you're spending lots of time in front of your computer. Maybe you can also quickly elaborate what else you're doing apart from work and apart from delighting the data world.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. I always used to say I'm a big fan of mountain biking and snowboarding, and that holds also true for myself because those are the only two sports basically where I can shut down completely. So my brain is stopping and just focusing on this activity so that I enjoy heavily. However, that changed dramatically, I would say, 2.5 years ago, because now I'm a proud dog daddy. So we have a king-size poodle. Called Emmy, and she's turning 3 this month. So this is not super compatible with my previous hobbies, but of course, training her and having long walks is also very, very enjoyable in the mountains as well, because hiking is also something we can do easily. Snowboarding, mountain biking, maybe still to come, but I think we need some more training sessions. So that's what I do mostly outside of the data world.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think snowboarding will take a while for the dog to learn this. Definitely. Yeah, before we kick things off, I will also shortly introduce myself. So I'm Jonathan. I'm the host of the series. I have a background in sport and health sciences. So I was also previously working in soccer, training gymnasts. So not so data related. Of course, we were also analyzing data for performance measures, but not that deep into data product management. But during my PhD, I was having first contacts with a health tech company where I was starting as a product manager, working the area of health in already data-driven products. And after that, I joined Mindfuel roughly or exactly 1 year ago. So it was my first birthday at Mindfuel this week. And now I'm working in the value acceleration team where we are bridging the gap between product and our customers. So I'm working closely together with Max as well, but also with all our customers. And outside of work, I'm not spending too much time with my dog, but I'm also spending a lot of time in the mountains. So I'm running a lot in the nearby Alps, and I'm still pursuing my PhD. So I haven't finished that topic yet, computational neuroscience, and there I investigate how we learn and control movement. All right, then we were talking a lot about your experience in the data world, and so basically what you did previously. Now, today's topic is you are not alone, challenges of AI and data leaders. So maybe as a first question, why are you the one I should talk to when we talk about the challenges and issues of data leaders?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. I think, again, also here we have to go even a step further back, because like bringing product management into the data world, I think it's a good reasoning talking to me. And the first moment where I realized that maybe I'm not the best computer scientist was when I was working at a big automotive or for a big automotive company based in Munich, where I also studied. And we were building a new website there. My job was rather to implement the website, but I gave a lot of feedback on how I believed this website should work, and the customer might be interested in different things. So actually, the feedback was partly well reserved, but let's say this was like the first baby steps into product management, like thinking rather end to end of what a customer might need. And that evolved naturally from the interface that I also studied. So basically, I studied business and computer science. In Germany, it's called Wirtschaftsinformatik. And I think this whole, let's say, study and the course around it is like basically the interface already. And I think that also led then into the intersection at Vorwerk, where I also started as a product manager, as I just said before. And I worked on the intersection of customers, then but also sales, then the business itself, like what's the business strategy, long-term strategy, and also technology. And there also data was heavily involved. And I found it so cool already back in the days, that must be like 10 years ago, when I started there, that even very, let's say, analog devices back in the days had already an infrared interface to get data out of a Thermomix for, let's say, longevity tests of hardware. So this mindset was already there, but of course, with the digital strategy around the product and the digitalization, again, of cooking, I think we had much, much better capabilities to get insights from customers and get a lot of data out of, let's say, the product lines at Vorwerk, which was super, super interesting. And I had the chance to work with super great people there as well, from all directions. And then, of course, when we transitioned into starting Mindfuel, we started with our studio, our consulting arm. And there I worked in different positions at interim sometimes on strategy level for different companies, sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger ones, even startups, which was great. So a lot of, let's say, different sizes and maturity levels and stages I've seen. And then I think in 2023, roughly, we also started with running a lot of interviews with data leaders around the globe. So because, let's say, we might also be in a product bubble sometimes and data bubble. So I think it was also worth a shot to go outside and see if people have those experience that we also made in our careers. And I think there was great feedback around the topic, how can we really show the impact of our AI and data teams in organizations in a better way?
Mhm.
And how can we prioritize things? So I think that led me basically to the conclusion that there is a gap, data business or AI business gap, which I think we all work on to build better data products, because I think that's what we strive for, building great products in general, but specifically AI and data products. And I think the whole, let's say, industry is still in a very early phase, right? It's not like we do AI for 100 years. Yes, theoretically, it's quite an old discipline to some extent. But then I think recent breakthroughs also bring this to a complete new level. And I think this is a great space to work on. And that's basically where I'm coming from and where I have experienced the gap in different contexts all over.
All over the place.
Yeah, all over the place sometimes.
Okay, cool. When we maybe, I think you were talking or you laid out nicely that you have this vast experience from both now the work with your own product you're developing, but also from the consultancy. If you want to summarize all of this into a coherent picture, what are for you the most common challenges you perceived from data leaders?
Yeah. For me, to put it in a nutshell, because that's what I actually always say, it's building the right things and building them right. And I think this topic is a core in product management, and specifically then also for AI and data product management. And then what does this mean specifically? Like, there's this Venn diagram, which I guess in the product management world is very, very common. It's about desirability, viability, and feasibility. And how do you get to this? So basically, who is actually your customer of your data product? Are you actually talking to them? Do you know what they want to reach? Does this data product also fit? And that's the viability topic, into our strategy of the team. So do we actually have the things, and does it fit into our goals as well? Do we have already enough, let's say, technology that we believe we can build this, which is the feasibility pillar? Do we actually have the data? Are we allowed to use that data? Is the data quality right, which is all about then dataability as well, which is basically a new dimension in product management for data. I think focusing on this topic more to identify and also basically de-risk innovation to some extent in a very early phase, and not just building things, because I think we have invested a lot of time and technology and upskilling in building things right. And I think we still invest too little time in really identify what is needed in the business or for the customer, which again, depending on company structures, might be the same thing. Sometimes it's also not. So if you talk to a lot of stakeholders, again, I'm not always sure if they are the receiver of your product, right? So they are an important stakeholder per se. Yeah, but how do you get also closer to business, closer to the customers? I think, going upwards to the business, I think it's the biggest challenge that I have seen for data leaders, I would say, because like building things, I think that's most commonly where people are experts. That's where their career is mostly coming from, or where they build it on. And then there are those people who need to bridge still the gap and not just focusing on delivery, of things, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Max, for this first insight. Maybe also a question to the audience, if you hear us out there. So Max was just elaborating on the topic of, okay, how much time should we actually invest into delivery versus how much time should we also invest into discovery? Maybe a question to you, and maybe you can just give us a percentage in the comments. So how much time or how much of your work do you actually invest into discovery, so discovering or doing the right things, versus building the right things. So basically, how much do you invest into delivery? So just post it in the comments, and we'll try to pick it up and see if we can dive a little bit deeper in here. Maybe also to you, Max, because this whole paradigm of product management for data teams is also new. To dive a little bit deeper into this question, currently there's this emergence of data product managers in companies. So in your opinion, do we need a new role as for data product managers, or are there also other people in data units who can take over this role?
Yes, of course. So what I always like also to say, Jonathan, is like product management per se is nothing you can study today, right? So it's always a natural involvement or evolving into this role, right? And I think there are two aspects. So number one is there are people who are already successful in delivering, let's say, products, right? And I mean really with delivery teams, hands-on, and maybe also being more advanced in the agile methodologies that have been quite popular in the last decade, right? And those people, of course, if they have a tendency to also broadening up their perspective on not only how we build things, but what we should build, I think that is always can be a natural progression, I would say. Yeah. So, I mean, today it's not the time to open up the always and never closing discussion in the product community about what is a product owner and what is a product manager. While I do have a opinion here, so I think like this is a great natural progression. And then I think we have seen different role names in organizations. So I think one I recently came across with was an AI and data translator, because it's even more specific on, let's say, what this person is doing. And I liked it a lot. I even have spoken to people, they are called AI business developers, because they say we actively drive bringing AI into the business and streamlining processes in the company. So I also liked this basically. So yeah, I think the role is not fully set in organizations. It's an evolving role. And also people who are maybe coming from a very technical governance in data organizations. There's the famous role of stewards. I think it's another name that I'm aware of. So but also like, is it always just the technical governance, or should we also discuss business governance, like value governance in this context and going up? So there are a lot of facets where people can really go into this role. And we have a
question.
Comment.
Yeah. So we have a comment from Borja. Sadly, only 0% building the things properly, which is not that much. Why should we focus on discovery so much? So maybe a question to you, Max. So why is the discovery so important?
Yeah, maybe just also for the rest of the audience, quickly explaining what discovery means. I'm not even sure if this is always a term that everybody knows. If it's 0%, then maybe this is not even a term that is well known. I think there's a methodology called discovery and delivery, which ideally go hand in hand. And discovery is, again, all about identifying why we should build something and who's our customer, and like the whole strategy part around this. Does it fit into our strategy? For example, if you are Volkswagen, we are building cars. Should we now also build rockets? Maybe that fits the strategy, but maybe it also doesn't. Depends maybe on different perspectives on where we go in the future. So discovery is then the intensive process to really find out what we need to build. And of course, it is reducing the risk of that we are building things that people really don't want or don't need. So as also currently, maybe there's a topic around how can we get more out of our existing teams, because maybe budgets are more tight. Also, investments are getting tighter, also for AI and data, which is still a very trending topic, right? I think it's very important in the discovery, and that's why you should focus on this to find out what are the right things you want to build and then building them right. So you can even calculate easily that if you instead of building 10 things in parallel where 6 will fail because you didn't check if this is really needed, you rather focus 30-40% on the discovery of the right 4 things and deliver that with the rest of the capacity, that you are below let's say the level of what you would do without discovery. So there's a very nice study around this where you can calculate even this. So yeah, I think that's very, very important. Yeah, building less with more impact. I think it's the common theme why you should build onto discovery processes in your organization.
Maybe a quick question. You just said, okay, maybe we built 6 things which do not work. What would be a measure for did not work for you to also clarify this?
Yeah, I mean, if you build a dashboard, which is also maybe considered a data product for a stakeholder, and it's not used at all, we invested maybe a couple of, I don't know what the right size in this call is, but a couple of 10,000 euros or even 100,000 euros, depending on the organization, then most probably there was no impact that this dashboard has created, right? So I think also understanding this and even finding out in a discovery, how do we measure success is even part of a discovery. Like, when are we successful? Because it's always great to have this hypothesis at hand before you actually, let's say, then deploy a product and then find out nobody's using it. Like this baseline and running in hypothesis and finding out what works is already part of the discovery, right? And it's also like one step and then it's done. I think it's a continuous process that is also extended while you have been delivering at the end for what you have prioritized. So because you want to iterate, you want to improve, you cannot always get it right in the first place, right? But defining success is even part of a discovery process, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have identified one of the main issues, which is basically building the right things and not building right, as one of the paradigms of today's session. And I think we also touched slightly on who will be responsible or who is basically involved in taking over this task. So basically, do we take somebody with a high data literacy and teach them more on business, or vice versa? And if we have a look at this overarching problem statement you just mentioned, what would be possible negative outcomes you saw during your interviews, but also during your career?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Let's start with a term called the data death trap, or data product death trap, maybe even better.
Okay.
And I remember one call with a person in that interview series, actually, who said to me that this company has 1,000 people and we are running 3,000 dashboards for them. And he asked me, what should I do? So I think that's a good example. And I keep it hidden what I recommended to him, because it was rather an extreme version of shut them all off and see who is calling you first. Anyway, I think the negative outcomes is that you are running into this death trap, and that's a real thing. Because if you just add always more to your portfolio of data products, right? Because normally you don't have one data product, you're adding more, there are dashboards, there are models, whatever you're building at the end of the day. You need more pipelines, you need more interfaces towards maybe a process, a product, you call it. And what you basically do there is, if you never, let's say also, and that's part of a product lifecycle, discontinue things, you always eat up more of your, let's say, foundational baseline, what you actually can deliver with a team, until you have so little capacity that you're only maintaining what you have, and you slowly create no value over time, while the cost stays the same. Because at some point you might even not be able to, let's say, maintain or improve what you need to maintain. So you're really just maintaining. And I think always like a sign where I get some mixed feelings is when I hear, we are now migrating to the third data platform and it will take us 3 years. And then we can talk to business again, what we can run on this. Because this is not how you would really build products, right? You need to start small, create value over time. And if something is not creating value, then an honest discussion about then we need to remove this again. I think that's also a very important part of product management, where the data and AI world should, let's say, adopt methodologies like product lifecycle, and not just finding the right things, but also keeping the right thing alive and kill the things that are not creating value.
Yeah. And given you have a team which is basically full in their capacity and maintaining stuff, so they are in a sort of reactive state. So how would you advise them on getting out of there?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a different definition of it. Like at some point you're always just reacting to new requests, and then you always have to say no because there's no capacity, I would say. I think the negative outcome is not only that, let's say your business partners are losing trust in you. There's also another negative outcome that I've seen, because the demotivation of your team, because like people in that space specifically, I mean, everybody want to create great products which create impact, right? Like I think that's the ideal outcome if you have a product mindset. And if you are already in this state, again, I think it would be worthwhile to identify things that you really need to shut down to bring capacities for discovery, to find new things, and then building them and create value again. So like really maybe reprioritizing your existing portfolio in your data team might be a good step. And while it can be very hard, right? Because explaining to people that something will be shut off is also not the nicest and always the easiest thing, because a common theme is always, but there's one user still who needs that dashboard, so we cannot shut it off, right?
Yeah.
And but still, I think this is something a data leader must do to protect their team, to keep up the trust with their business partners. And let's say prioritization, portfolio management on this level, it's a continuous task. And this is what you need to adopt to be successful in the long term, right? And become a proactive organization again, because if you have a better feeling of what people need and you can build the right foundations for this, I think there's a chance that you come back in front of the train and not just running behind.
Okay, thank you. So if I summarize this quickly, so it's basically a shift back from not taking all of the requests into proactively tackling new opportunities. And maybe if this is the first step towards an improvement, what is the target picture? Given the whole world would adopt data product management now, what would be the ideal world for you? How data units should work like to avoid such a state?
Yeah, so I think the solution space is always very individual, right? And it depends also where you are in your journey, I would say. I think it is really, first thing I would propose is you have a clear goal alignment with your teams, but also with the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in many cases, a data and an AI team is a support function, right? While there might be more central teams in some cases, and there might be some more decentralized teams where they even are closer maybe to product teams, like digital product teams, or hardware product teams as well, of course, or decentralized in business functions. Still, like, why are we here? And what is our mission, let's say, to help the business grow? I think that is the question every support function has to ask for themselves. So I think that's number one. And then secondly, and I think that goes hand in hand with what I mentioned before, like the assessment of your value contribution. So if you are not able to articulate what value you create, how should you basically identify what should go and what you should build next, right? So I think this goes hand in hand to what we just have mentioned. And I think that leads me to the topic around the discovery again, because a different term also here is, while this is the process you have to implement, it's also about value driven or value-based prioritization, because you will also not, maybe also good to understand, you will not run a discovery on each single item that enters the stage, right? If there's a small change, then you will not run I don't know, 18 weeks discovery to find out if the button should be blue or green. This is not what discovery is, right? But de-risking that you create impact, that's a big part of it. And then the last step is also like, how do you communicate all of this? I think that's also a very common theme that we hear often. But the stakeholder is screaming the loudest, and we need this now. So I think this efficient stakeholder communication, building the trust, is, I think, very, very important. And really to get this right, because prioritization is so easy and it's so hard. I think that's maybe also good to understand, because it is all about continuity. So I can give you an example. What do you actually do when there is a new, very high valuable business opportunity that comes into your, let's say, assessment? And I think that's also, again, a little bit part of the reactive team in many cases. Then we all switch to this new thing, because now we said this is what we need to do, and we are running behind again. So I think that's also the ideal stage for me, that a data leader is able to protect their teams in a positive way, not overprotecting them, but like saying, we can do this now, but the cost of change is XYZ, because we have invested in this other glory idea from maybe a couple of days, weeks, months, or years, depending on where you work. And we can change, but should we change? And if we change, then this is an active decision that we take as a team together with the business. And I think that's very important. That, I mean, we should change if there are new things coming up, right? Of course, like this is also part of product management. And specifically in the AI and data world, where things are very fast, you might have to more often question yourself where you're going. But yeah, I think that's the things. Clear goal alignment with the business. Why are we here? Assessment of value contribution, like how can you assess this for your team? Then value-driven prioritization, and then how do you communicate with your stakeholders and in general in the company, all of this efficiently. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for this insight. It sounds like a lot of work, all of these different points. So basically aligning the initiatives, filtering the initiatives, run the discovery, communicate a lot with stakeholders, which I think communication is always key for product managers to thrive in this skill. What are like, how much time should the product manager and also the team spend on these different I mean, this also ties back to the question we had previously. So how much time do we want to spend on the different initiatives?
Yeah, again, it really depends always, right? There's not like this very specific answer, but there are best practices and things that I've seen. In that case, I would even, if you think about a funnel of opportunities until you make discovery and then you also go into delivery, I would slice this even in 3 stages. So I think you should roughly spend 20% on new ideas, early assessments of ideas with the business, building business cases to some extent as well. If that's needed, if we are talking about bigger data products, which maybe have a very high impact also on the business, it's most probably needed that also the business stakeholders are checking in on this value contribution from the data team. Like this whole opportunity funnel process, keeping Stakeholders also engaged. Again, it's also about communicating what we will not do. I mean, if you say yes to one thing, normally you have to say no to 10 things. And doing this actively takes time and it's effort, and it depends also where the company stands, let's say from their maturity level, how they perceive the data team. And then I would say roughly 30% on the discovery. So what comes out of the 20% as a prioritization for topics we should discover could be roughly 30%. And then if I'm correct in my brain, 50% are left for actually delivery. But then it's also very vague already, because if you make a discovery, then you slowly go into delivery. Sometimes you will still prototypes to actually validate not only the feasibility that you can build it. Ideally, you also start validating that your hypothesis for the value are true. So if you have the right hypothesis before you start building, it's a great idea to validate continuously. And that leads us back to success, Jonathan, that we say, can we actually generate the numbers for our hypothesis or the assumptions in our business case, for example, right? And if not, there's a great moment. Yes, we have spent time, but we haven't maybe delivered it all, to re-ask again, should we really continue? And I think that's an early thing with the business. Or as just discussed, is there something where we believe it might hold more value for us, right? And this constant questioning, de-risking, I think that's a common pattern. So 20, 30, 50, while again, let's say in between, it can get a little bit blurry sometimes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Also in regards of the time, maybe before we jump into the Q&A, one last question to you, Max. Given your experiences, and we have explained the design and target picture now a little bit, the first steps and how to get there, what would you recommend to data leaders to start doing tomorrow to tackle this gap between business and data teams?
Okay, as a product manager, or let's say product guy living in a data world, maybe that's a good formulation, Jonathan. Maybe I start with the outcome, and then we go backwards how we get there as a first step, of course. We said just the first step.
Right.
So now imagine somebody of your team, maybe very technical person, a data engineer maybe, apparently meets your CEO of the company in the elevator. And the CEO asks, what are you working on? The ideal outcome is that maybe this technical person is not explaining in all great detail to the CEO of the company all the technical things, which most probably for many people are very interesting, but maybe not for the CEO. Depends on the company, of course, as always. But basically, this very technical person in your team, and most probably start with yourself, would be also good. I can explain what's the impact he or she creates by building things for the company. Like how does his or her work connect to the company goals? Because I think this is something, an ideal state outcome, which would be really, really cool, I think, for data and AI teams. And so the first step, to get back to your question, be honest to yourself today, maybe also tomorrow, depending on which time zone you are in. Think about if you right now, so think about what you're building right now. What are things you're building with your team? And honestly answer the question, can I just right now explain how it drives the business? What value does it create? For whom does it create this value? So what are hard benefits that your company needs to be more successful, whatever that again means, because that's very specific for which company you're in. That would be ideal already. And if you only can answer the soft values or benefits, which is also already cool, but I think what is not enough is the answer, yeah, but it's clear we all believe in AI and data, right? Like, this is the new thing. So the others are not understanding why we are here. I think that's not what you should do. So be honest with yourself, be brave, sit down, think about how you or your team is creating value. And then the brave part is not just sitting down, but approach your business partner or whomever you are basically building it for, and then really see if that person, if she or he also has the same picture how you create value. And keep in mind, whenever you do this, whatever number maybe or whatever value you have, it might be not right, and it's not about a right number, but it's making the first step, approach that person, and really starting the conversation about how together you can create value. So yeah, I think that would be the first step, if that I would recommend to everyone. Can you today explain how your data team creates value for your company tomorrow?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So it's really all about going out, talking to people, and ideally also taking the stairs and not the elevator, from a health perspective. Okay, to finish things off, we also have the first question already popping in. We will have now a short Q&A session before we close the session for today. So you can ask your questions to Max, and I will translate them and bring them over to him. So we have the first question from Vero. Super interesting, thank you. But how could I excel as a data leader in cooperation with my business?
So first of all, Jonathan, who decided that it's only questions to me? Maybe there are also questions for you. Let's see what the audience.
I'm also happy to take some questions here.
Also ask. Yeah, thank you for this question. And I think that's really the tricky part, that I also tried to explain just now, like starting the conversation on why should we do this? Like what I see a lot is always, this is what I need, but not why we need this. And I think as a data leader, your task is to understand why you need this, and then we can help them to find out what they need. I give an example. I think once we were asked to build an upsell recommender in a checkout basket at a very late stage of a checkout process, because there was the idea to increase the basket size of that e-commerce shop. When we look on the whole journey, we find out through data that the drop-off rate was already way before, because the whole process was just very complex. And this is why it's why we are building things. So I think that's a good example to that question. It's not like just asking what we should build, but really understand why. And I think this is something data leaders need to do. And Jonathan, it leads us back to discussion we had. Where are those roles coming from? Yeah. Many times it's a very technical careers that people went through, which again is needed because it's that space we are in. However, like really asking why we should build it and finding a common ground. So for example, also making standardized approach what you need to ask for everything that comes in. So you also can compare them, and it's not always different.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We have another question. Unfortunately, I don't see the name. I just see LinkedIn user. How would you suggest AI and data leaders deal with the difficulties to convince stakeholders and get their buy-in to contribute to a joint solution?
Yeah, very good question. Again, I think it's through the value approach that we also tackled here already. I think oftentimes this is not even discussed, and this leads to frustration along the journey, right? And we also set an example where they have built 3,000 dashboards for 1,000 people. So most probably that was an issue that we not always discussed. What is our joint mission? And I think this is what it helps you with the business together to really have a strong partnership, that we are into this together. Because in many cases, and that's also something the business has to accept, is when we deliver a solution, then the value is unlocked when it is used in the business, right? But making this explicit and clear, I've seen a lot of times that said, yeah, here's the model. What's the problem? Technically, it runs here, so
Yeah.
Why don't care? I think part of a data team is getting one step closer to the business, and also in the discovery or even before in the idea stage, identify how do we roll this out, who is using it, who is doing what's the accountability of the business side as well. And then, and I think that is difficult, this transformation will take time, and depending on how much things we have delivered, which are maybe not as expected, that can be a longer or a shorter journey. But like really sitting together and really foster an environment where we have a partnership, we have committed goals together, a clear alignment on who is doing what, which accountability lies, which part of it. I think it's very, very important. And then the bigger topic, but I think that would be worth a complete session, is how does the data world also fit to incentivation models in organizations? Because I've also seen that this can be a burden sometimes, while I've seen companies which make a great step forward because they built this partnership between data and AI teams and the business by having shared goals on the incentivation model as well. So maybe also a small tip to investigate, but I think that would be a big topic.
Okay, maybe also a topic to pick up in the future again in this series. Okay, one last question. From your experience, what are other challenges which will be relevant in the future? So not only today, from what you have observed, but maybe also based on your experience, what do you predict what will be relevant in the future?
Yeah, so I think what we currently see is, and that's a little bit where I'm afraid of, maybe that's also a good way to put it, Jonathan. I think we have a complete new paradigm shift in the whole data and AI world, right? Like which came with Gen AI. And now it's again time to build things right, because there's this new shiny object on the wall which everybody wants, and apparently we find out if we want to build our own large language models, the data quality we're having today, and it's a big theme in the community, is not right, and the foundations are missing. So again, the challenge is please not just go into the trap again and just building new things right. We need to build things right because it is very important, but building the wrong things, but in a right fashion, they remain the wrong things. So I think that is also a challenge that I want to highlight. How do we navigate through all this, let's say, hypes and trends in that space? And I think that is also a product management mindset, because there was mobile, there was Web3, there's AI. So there are a lot of trends always evolving over time. But how can we use that for our company in the most sense? And I have to admit, in some companies, the change might come faster because their core business is in danger with what is coming. But also bringing this in a realistic state into the organization is a challenge. That I see. Like now everybody screams it, and it's maybe top C-level priority. And how do you deliver towards this, right? But in a way that it's that you meet the expectations at the end of the day, and not just again hide in this hype and I told you so, but bring the value in, show the value, still build great tools. And I think that is super relevant for the future, because the space is evolving so fast, and navigating it in the right manner, I think it's something a data leader must do in the next years. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Max. There are apparently no further questions from what I can see in the stream. Then I think it's just time to thank you, Max, and to also have a little look out into what's coming next for us. So we are having more sessions in this series of AI Impact Live. So we are going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics we touched today. For example, to communicate efficiently with stakeholders, to escape the build trap. So basically to also identify the right things to build. How do we want to assess value? So these are all topics we are going to cover in the future. And if you are also interested in a topic you do not yet see here, and you think it's super relevant or it's a big problem for you, please also feel free to reach out to us via LinkedIn, via email, wheresoever. And we will also try to bring this up in the series. And with that, I would like to thank you all for joining in, to thank you, Max, for giving or for sharing your insights for today. And see you the next time.
And Jonathan, thank you and happy anniversary. We are super happy to have you and hosting this session here today.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.